says waiting.
Oh, hey everybody! Slight technical difficulty. They're getting started. Welcome. Hi, I am Birdie.
And I'm Jen.
Oh, I'm getting some bad feedback. I'm not sure how that's happening. I think maybe from Jen. Hey guys.
I won't say anything.
Okay, I'm getting a big echo. Sorry guys, give us a second. Yeah. Do you have your sound? I think you need headphones on.
Really?
Because it's playing through your screen and it's coming through your
Okay,
thing.
hold on.
Guys, give us a second. Sorry, gang. We are having technical difficulties.
I have to find the right setup. Hold on, I'll have to go upstairs.
Okay, I'm muting Jen for the moment. And that seems to have solved the problem, at least on my end. Now, I don't know if the echo is coming through on your end, everybody, but I was having some bad feedback. Okay, the echo is on my end. So guys, give me a second. I'm gonna plug in my actual microphone instead of using webcam. Sorry, normally we have this under control. Okay. Woohoo! This seems to have solved the problem. It was not Jen, it was me. Anyway, oh no, we're still having the echo on my end.
Okay, I'm back. Is it still you?
You know what? I thought it was you. And then I thought it was me.
Hold on.
But I'm still getting some terrible feedback, and I think that it is. Yeah, I'm still getting feedback on my end. So let me see if I can figure this out, gang. I'm terribly sorry. Yeah, I'm still getting feedback on my end. So let me see if I can figure this out, gang. I'm terribly sorry. Yeah, it's. And I know it sounds great to the audience. I have been told this. My partner just came in the room and said, everything's fine. But on my end, the echo is ferocious. So hold on. Guys, just bear with me for a minute. I'm figuring this out.
Yeah, I've turned off my sound. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
You hear me okay? Because I've turned off my sound on that. And I have my headset on, so we'll see.
Yeah, okay.
Somebody says it's okay. Stephanie.
And somebody is hearing an echo.
Oh dear.
I do not hear the echo now. Yay!
Okay.
Okay, we're good. We're live. I don't know what happened. I put on my big headphones. Maybe that did the trick. Anyway, hey, welcome. My name is Birdie. Welcome to No Rivets. I'm here with our operations manager, Jen Lee. She is incredible. And we have a really fun night tonight of mapping mysteries. And yes, my shirt says the end is near with a big UFO, but the end is not near, gang. Nothing to worry about. This is just an ironic statement. Based on everyone being so terrified of 3i Atlas. Guys, nothing's going to happen to us. It's going to fly through our solar system and keep going on its way. There's nothing to worry about there. So anyway, let's get started. Tonight we're going to be sharing some super fun maps. I have mapped so many things, it's out of control. And tonight we wanted to share some mapping mysteries, some of these big questions we've had. We're going to cover the history of the little gray aliens and their visit to Earth, a little look at that. I did a big workshop on this some months ago, and I'll talk about that as well. We're going to cover Mount Shasta. Are there really Lemurians under Mount Shasta? We're going to find out. We're also going to take a look at Eisenhower, President Eisenhower. There's a story that he met with ETs and got into a treaty. Did this happen? We're going to find out. We're also looking at, what else are we looking at, Jen, tonight?
Oh, a bunch of mind maps and what a beginner map looks like and what a beginner mind feels like as we learn mapping. So I hope you guys learn a whole lot about my experience and what you can experience mapping.
Yes, so we're going to start with, I'm going to show you a series of maps that I have done. I'm going to tell you some great stories associated with these maps. And then we're going to move on to Jen's maps, and she's going to give the student perspective and what it's like to learn transdimensional mapping, which is a form of remote viewing. If you're just coming in and you're new to this and you're not even sure what any of this stuff is, remote viewing is a method that the US government developed using scientists from Stanford, along with some natural psychics, famous natural psychics. And they discovered a method whereby they could train soldiers to become psychic spies. And they sent these soldiers' minds to all kinds of places around the planet looking at their adversaries. You know, that was kind of the point of the program. It was declassified in 1995. I learned it right after it was declassified. So I have been engaged in this process for 30 years now. And for the past 15 years been working on my mapping methodology, which is a form of remote viewing, but it's a really kind of cool form where we look at things in a different way and we're able to build a full narrative and understand what's actually happening. You don't know where you're going most of the time in remote viewing of any form, whether it's mapping or another form. You're just given a set of random numbers or just told there's something that they want you to remote view, and you go to town and you find out at the end. And so every single map we're presenting tonight, neither myself nor Jen knew what we were looking at ahead of time. These are all blind sessions, most of them double blind, meaning that the person who came up with the task for you to do, in the old remote viewing terminology, the target, and I like the word experience. I use the word experience. So double blind means that somebody came up with it at some time, then it was thrown into some big pool of experiences, targets, and something was pulled out at random and nobody knows what it is you're looking at. And so these are kind of a combination of single blind, meaning the tasker was there or knew and directly gave it to the explorer, the remote viewer. And some of them were double blind, meaning it was in a big pool and just randomly assigned. So let's go ahead and get to town on this. We've got a lot to cover tonight, and I'm going to kind of watch the comments as we go. And if a comment pertains to what we're talking about in the moment, I'll throw the comment on screen and we'll answer the question. Otherwise, we'll answer your questions when we get to the end of our map. So hang on, here we go. Mapping mystery. Ta-da! So the first set of mysteries we're looking at is the history of the gray aliens. Now, I did a presentation for the students in the ET Studies program at Ubiquity University on this big project that I completed. It took a very, very long time because these sessions were done blind. I did several hundred sessions on this, and I came up with kind of the entire history of the gray aliens from the time, from why they landed on Earth and what they were doing when they arrived here, leading up to the whole abduction phenomenon. Now, if you're familiar with the abduction phenomenon, people, thousands upon thousands of people have reported having these experiences where little gray beings about 3-4 feet tall would come into their bedrooms at night, whisk them away to a ship, and do all kinds of medical procedures. Now, I did this presentation for Ubiquity University, and if you're interested in hearing 6 hours, me talk for 6 hours on this and show a lot of maps, you can go to Ubiquity University and find this workshop, and it's available there. But I'm going to share some of the maps, just a little selection to kind of whet the appetite and to share some of these mysteries. So let's start. So what kind of started me on this project was the Betty and Barney Hill abduction. Now, this is a classic case. It's kind of the first abduction case in history that was highly studied. Betty and Barney Hill were a couple in New Hampshire, and they were out driving on this country road. This was a long time ago, a few decades, many decades past now, in the, I want to say the 50s. I forget now exactly when this happened. I want to say the 1950s. Maybe it was around then, maybe the 60s. And they came across, they were driving down this lonely country road in New Hampshire in an enormous UFO that had portholes all along the side of it with little aliens looking outside, hovered above their car. They were both taken aboard this ship, and they underwent hypnotic regression after this experience. They had hours of missing time, and they both reported the same kinds of medical procedures, especially focusing on the reproductive system, the reproductive organs. And it was extremely traumatic for both of them. And their niece, Kathleen Marsden, is now a highly celebrated abduction researcher. So what started me on this journey of looking at the gray dudes was doing this mapping of the Betty and Barney Hill abduction. And so this was a blind mapping. And as you can see, I got the car that they were driving in. There was the big ship, and I said that the little aliens were looking down at them. They were terrified. They didn't know what to do. Their car stalled out, an old car. It was vintage. I see now that John Knowles in the comments. Yay, John. He's one of our explorers. Yeah. He is letting me know it was 1961. So
65.
66. Okay. We don't know when it was, but it was around then.
It says 61. It says 61.
61. So we have this big ship, and it was hovering over. And, I thought about this map for a long time after I did this. And I thought, wow, what's actually going on with abductions? There are all of these theories out there. You have a number of experiencers who have been through this, who have reported this, that feel that this has some kind of spiritual meaning for them. They feel that they've grown through these encounters, that these encounters were important for their development. But then we also have a number of experiencers who have been through the whole abduction scenario, who feel that this is a terrifying and horrifying thing, that they were taken against their will. There was no consent given. This is true kidnapping. And if you listen to all of the UFO researchers out there today, some fall on one side of the fence, some fall on the other. But no one really understands exactly what's happening with this abduction phenomenon. It is very mysterious. It's pervasive. It seems to happen, within families. Families report these abductions. Maybe the grandmother has had an experience, then maybe the daughter, then maybe a son. It seems to happen in families. That's been widely reported. And some researchers such as, say, David Jacobs, UFO abduction researcher, feels that these little gray dudes are up to absolutely no good. Others feel that maybe there's something else going on here. Some haven't made any conclusions whatsoever. But I wanted to find out what's really going on here. What's actually happening? So I started a project where I started looking at, who are these gray beings? Who are they? Where did they come from? What are they doing on our planet? How did they get here? what's actually going on. So I did a number of these sessions, and let's take a look at the history. So one of the first sessions here, we're looking now inside. This is actually inside the ship that was part of the Betty and Barney Hill abduction. This is the same ship. And this was a blind session. It was actually double blind because it was in a pool. And you have the little gray dude there in his outfit. Now he looks like a lizard. He's not a lizard. That's just because I'm a terrible artist. You don't have to be a great artist to do this stuff, gang. You can be really, really crappy like me and still get cool data. So the little guy in the blue suit, that's one of the gray aliens. And inside this ship, there were all these windows around, just as Betty and Barney Hill described. And I got that there were 28 of these windows around, and that 28 is a perfect number. It's a perfect number mathematically. And I felt that that was important. And I got the idea that kind of math is math, no matter who we are, math is math, and that the number was important. And I don't know why, but there we are. And inside the ship, there were these pods, multiple pods. They were metallic and biological combined. And the beings were inside these pods. And I don't know if this means that these pods were kind of a stasis chamber or a resting chamber or a hyperbaric chamber. I don't know what they are, but there were many pods inside this ship. And the little gray dudes were inside the pods, and some were outside the pods. And if you see the little kind of gingerbread man there with all the dots inside of him, that's what's called a body scan in transdimensional mapping. It's a procedure I came up with 25 years ago for figuring out what's going on in a person's body. And I wanted to map out this person's body, this little gray body, to find out what is it really like. And I got that he was wearing a form-fitting suit. It was really tight. It was a protective suit. It was also self-healing. There was a fluid exchange between the suit and the world around it. And so I got all these kind of interesting things about the ship. So here we go. And a lot of people wonder, are the Greys, are they AI? Are they biological creatures? Are they mechanical creatures? Are they robots? There's a lot of theories flying out there. And all of the data that I got over all of these many sessions seems to indicate that these are biological creatures, but they do have some kind of more centralized intelligence. They're extraordinarily connected to each other. Their thoughts are like breath. I got that over and over. When they think, it's like our breathing. Take in and take out. You take in the thoughts, you let out the thoughts. Kind of this give and take scenario is super interesting to me. So let's go on to the next thing. So here I am looking at the home planet where they came from. Now, they came from someplace extremely far away. I don't know exactly where this was. I didn't seem to get a sense of like the actual location of where they came from. I don't know exactly where in space, but this is another planet. It's not another dimension. These beings are what I would call extraterrestrial. At least they were at this time when they lived on this planet. They were from another planet. That doesn't mean that other beings aren't from other realities, realms, dimensions, universes, what have you. It's a crazy, crazy world out there. But these guys are literally ETs, extraterrestrials, and they had a planet, and the planet did not survive. You can see that kind of a yellow sun-looking thing with the lines coming out. Now, that's not their sun. That was some kind of a thing that went wrong. Now, it wasn't a weapon per se. It wasn't like they bombed themselves out of existence like humanity may do at some point, the road we're going down, right? But it was more like something went wrong, terribly, terribly wrong, and they knew that it was coming. They knew it was going to happen. And this was their planet, the top level of their planet, above the surface, the curvature there, that's the curvature of their planet. Above the surface became completely untenable. They weren't able to live there. They were all underground. All those little pods are there. Those are the same pods that showed up in the prior session. all of those pods. And it was gold. There was like actually something very, very gold in color. And maybe it actually was gold. Gold is a noble element. Maybe it was used by these gray dudes. I'm not sure if it was literally gold or not, but the gold color was extraordinarily strong to me. And they transported out. And today, all of that stuff is still there, but the planet is empty. They were not able to sustain their life. And I see that people are asking, have you picked up on the agenda and all this? Oh, yes, I have. You're going to learn a little bit about the agenda now. And we don't have time to go through because like I said, I spent 6 hours talking about a number of the sessions I did on that workshop, but I could have probably talked for 6 months straight about all the data. So kind of crazy. I'm just giving you a little taste of this. So the next thing here is a look at one particular individual from this collective, from this group of individuals, these people. And I generally call all non-human beings that are sentient, I tend to call them people like I call other humans people. I just feel like we're all part of this big universe and we should all try to understand each other. So if you hear me call something like this a person, it's not that I feel that they're a human, but I feel that they have some sense of personal agency or personhood unto their own. So I like the word person instead of alien or ET, because to me that feels as a way that we're distancing ourselves from what's possible or what's out there. So here we have our little gray alien. And I say that he's not human. And again, I'm showing you different maps from different sessions. Typically, a session has multiple maps. If you've watched any of my live sessions here, you know that I go through multiple maps in a session. So this is just pulling out a particular map from a session to illustrate a point. So here we have our little person. He's wearing a suit. He's carrying this really interesting ring-like shape. These things absolutely fascinated me. He didn't have a detectable gender. I don't know if they have genders or not. If they do, it's not easily identifiable or understandable by us as humans. I don't know, maybe if I looked at them on the biological molecular level, maybe I'd be, or the, endocrine level. I don't know exactly. I'm not a physiologist, but he didn't have male or female parts, let's say bits, so it just seemed genderless to me. Doesn't mean that they don't have genders. It's just I'm not able to identify if they do or not. And so the clothes that he was wearing, I got the sense that they weren't actually clothes per se, like we wear clothes. We wear clothes for, both protection and to make a statement or to be fashionable or pretty or handsome or cool, right? They didn't have those same kind of ideas about their clothes. The clothes strictly were a protective device, and they allowed an exchange of gases through the outfit. So there's something about an exchange of gases through the outfit. And they had foot coverings, but no toes on these little gray dudes that I looked at. And I felt that he was elegant and quiet. This constant thought in and out like breath, like I mentioned. But these rings were so super interesting. And I wrote here on this map, and I thought this was a pretty profound statement. The body is a construct around a sentient being. And you know what? Isn't that what we all are? We are a sentient being. Our body's kind of a construct around us. So to me, that just really spoke to me that, hey, they're people just like we are, right? And so he's holding this ring. This ring is super interesting. It was like a light tube, but it wasn't a tube. It was light, just light, but contained in that shape in some way. And you will see these light rings show up in the next few maps, different sessions. And these light rings were like an amplifier, and it could collapse things around it. It was not light frequency. It was more than that. It was like stretching and collapsing things. It's had to do with what I called here time waves. Now, time waves is one of those terms that literally means nothing scientifically, but it was my mind's way of trying to get across a concept that was bigger than I could understand. Okay, so time waves. So it was able to collapse time, or the idea of time, if time even exists. That's still up for grabs, folks, whether or not time exists. And I felt that this was super important. So let's move on. So now we're looking at the ship that they left their planet on. This wasn't the only ship. And in all the sessions I did, there were multiple ships that they shot out. But this one ship, you can see it here. It had multiple sections to it. Had like kind of a cone nose, elongated. Hey, kind of looks like 3-Eye Atlas, right? Or Oumuamua. But it wasn't. This was a solid out, wasn't a natural object. This was like a big, enormous, like really big ship, really, really, really huge. And the front part of the ship, where all the beings were, there were over 100,000 or more. I put 100,000 or more. And then there was some kind of interior corridor. And then the energy source was in the center. The energy source was super interesting. It was expanding and contracting. It's not nuclear. I probed it. Is this nuclear energy? No, it's not. It was some kind of energy source I could not identify, something completely non-human, something I have never learned about or experienced. And I'm very well read in science, in the sciences, and a big understanding on energy sources, all these things. I could not identify what this was. And then another corridor, and then the back was like their storage area and their supplies. I drew like little boxes, but that was just a way of me illustrating that their supplies are there. They weren't literally in U-Haul boxes. And I got that the ship, it ended up at Earth, right? So as it traveled, and you could see on the bottom of this map, inside the ship, it had all of those light rings, those yellow light rings. And so the ship was smaller, and then it would expand, and then it would get smaller. And each time, this progression, there was like this zap between, and it would propel them along the way. And then they ended up at Earth. And here's where they landed. Next slide. They landed at the bottom of the planet. Now, if you look at the planet here, this is Earth. This is our planet, our beautiful, beautiful blue ball in the sky. But if you look at the landforms here, they don't look like the landforms today. So this was, we can attribute this to plate tectonics. This was this is maybe like Pangea, as you learn about in grade school. This is when the landforms were more closely together. They hadn't separated. Plate tectonics is going to eventually make this planet look like it does today, but it looked very different back then when these guys landed. And they landed in what we could call Antarctica today. Boom, they landed, and it created this huge shock wave. And you see the size of the ship there and the size of the planet. Now, when you draw these maps in mapping, nothing is ever exactly true to size. But I wrote that this was kind of true to size. This was the relative size. This thing was huge. This is like bigger than New Mexico and Texas combined. It was enormous, enormous. Boom, landed in the water, created these shock waves out. It was disruptive. It caused a tidal wave. And the ship itself, something had happened to it to cause it to kind of crash land like this. And when it happened, it rendered the ship unable to correct itself or to fly back out. It was damaged, and there were some deaths on the ship, and it remained hidden. I wrote out. It remains hidden. In other words, it's still here today, gang. But some know where it is. Some know where it is. So there's all these stories about Antarctica. Maybe this is one of those stories, right? And what happened next? I asked myself, what happened next? I asked myself in this mapping. Nothing for a long, long time. Nothing. The ship was trying to self-repair, trying to reboot itself. It was giving out some signals. Those are kind of like the little arrows going out in different directions, kind of sending out signals, but those died out after a time. Now, one of the things that I looked at, because these are a telepathic species, right? Very, very telepathic. All the experiences report this. So why couldn't they telepathically call their neighbors? It ends up This was the only ship that ever survived anything. The other ships that were sent out didn't survive. This was it. It's the lone ship of the Greys. They landed here. And X marks the spot, one and done. It was the only ship that made it anywhere. It was not an elegant landing. Something went wrong. So, and so after they landed, they had to figure out what to do. This took eons, okay, eons, a very, very incredibly long time, incomprehensible to us. And they had this crisis. Now, this is a very cohesive species. They tend to work in unison. They tend to understand, work on consensus. Everybody is in agreement. And this was the only time in the history of the Gray Dudes ever where they had the break in consensus, because they tried to figure out what to do. What do we do? There was like this idea that maybe they could, what do we do? And what they were really worried about was because something was incoming, and they knew it was incoming. Now, this ended up being that big asteroid or meteor or whatever it was that landed during the time of the dinosaurs and wiped the dinosaurs out. They knew this was coming, and they had to figure out what to do, and they couldn't figure out what to do, and they ended up doing nothing. So they were there when this happened. They were almost ready to be able to fly their ship back out. They had been there for eons. Their ship had pretty much self-healed, but they weren't ready to fly it out. They couldn't come to a consensus on this. And so they were stuck there again. This was like kind of a double whammy for them. They were stuck there again. They were almost ready to leave, but their indecision made them stuck on Earth. So here they are under the water. Here's another look. Here's their ship. And this is post-repair. This is post-dinosaur catastrophe, post the initial catastrophe, which was eons, millions of years before the dinosaurs, millions of years later. Here they are. Then they got to a point where they were able to repair up enough again. They started making little ships. They only had this huge ship. They didn't have little ships inside this big ship. They started making little ships, miniature ships. And the ships started going out. This is under the water. This is still under the sea, deep, 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 dark sea, still in what we would now call the Antarctic area. And you can see the bottom seafloor, and they built a structure under the water, like a habitat, where and some of them moved into that habitat. Some of them stayed in the big ship, but they started sending these little scout-like ships. These were saucer shaped like those energy rings. The energy rings were still their part of their propulsion system, or how they moved through time and space. They had 3 of these at first, then many, many more. And that's the end of what I'm going to share about the history of the Greys. But those little ships, those were essentially the first flying saucers. They ended up flying up and out and going over the planet. And many, before humanity was even humanity, before, when there were just tiny little mammals along the surface, and they've been here with us ever since. In some ways, this is as much their planet as it is ours. And in some ways, even more their planet, because we developed as a species much later than their arrival on this planet. So they're someone that we have to live in harmony with. They're here. And though they may be spacefaring now, they weren't at the time. They were stuck on this planet. So it's pretty interesting. So I wanted to share those maps from this big project I did on the history of the Greys. And let's go on. Now we're going to take a look at the Tic Tac incident. Now I mapped this live in front of my last October, a year ago, pretty much exactly a year ago. It was one of the first classes I taught after coming back into the public field. And the students gave me this to view. So I did this blind. The students did know what it was. And there's an excerpt from this session that you can watch here on this channel. You can see the students watching me, all filming me while I'm doing this. And I only posted an excerpt of the Tic Tac because I did get some information that was pretty personal about some of the individuals involved in this, and I didn't want to post that publicly. But this is pretty interesting. So you see the tic tac there in the center, and on the upper left-hand corner, it's kind of hard to see. This is a messy map. I did this was a speed, what I call speed session. I did this super fast, like in 40 minutes, the whole thing super fast. I got the pilot. He sees the tic tac. The tic tac dives down into the water. And then there's this big underground base there, underground base with many tic tacs, almost like an assembly line where they're building these tic tacs. Now, these are not the gray dudes. These are not the gray aliens. It's a completely different species. And I got that. It's kind of cute. I got a little shark that was like coming up to it, and the shark was, and I wrote that the shark has seen some stuff, although I didn't use the word stuff. I used another language, but I'm trying to keep my language PG on these. So anyway, so there's a big underwater base there with many, 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 many ships that are being built, that are being developed, and it sends tic tacs out, and the tic tacs come back in. So it was a short session for my students, but I wanted to share that tonight too. And now we're going to take a very short look at the Anunnaki. Now, the Anunnaki are a mysterious group of so-called gods from the sky that interacted with the Sumerians. And so this is just, I'm only showing you this map because this is from a short, well, it actually wasn't that short a session. I did probably 5 maps on this session, but I'm just showing you one map because there's something really interesting about this. So the Anunnaki were said to have come down from the sky. They taught the Sumerians a bunch of different things that they could do. They could, they taught them how to build things. They taught them metallurgy. They taught them agriculture. They taught them medicine, a number of different things. And all of these stories go back in our ancient human history. They're biblical stories, Sumerian stories, stories going back through all cultures have similar kinds of stories about sky beings or beings from another place that come and have taught humanity these kinds of things. Now, the Anunnaki were kind of a mixed bag too. There's lots of stories that they were, kind of slave drivers, literal slave drivers, enslaved humanity, or perhaps weren't the kindest individuals on the planet. So if you look in the map here, you can see that there's little humans. They're all building something. And then there's a really tall dude, and he's got a big nose, and he's wearing like a blue robe, and he's got like a red headdress of some sort on. That's our Anunnaki guy. And I said he's teaching, pushing, he's royalty, tall, overbearing, visit for a while, and plans to return. Keep that in mind before our next map, gang. And he got what he wanted. And then we have laborers. Those are all the humans there, the laborers. They're working, they're building ancient things. And I said, is it the pyramids? No, this was not the pyramids. Anunnaki did not build the pyramids, or were not involved with the pyramids. That's a whole nother can of worms for another day. But they were looking up, and there were these unusual ships. And what's kind of interesting was the gray dudes knew that the Anunnaki were here. They observed them, but didn't do anything about it. They were just observers watching all this. So the gray dudes showed up in this session, even though they were just kind of a tangential thing here. They weren't like the featured person. And I got that they were complex and emotional. And these ships were kind of orangey colored, or at least they had like a haze around them that was orangey colored. And they were hexagonal or had different, they weren't like a flying saucer per se. They were a little more unusual kind of a ship. And I got that the humans were scared and tired, overworked. They were learning new trades, farm workers, construction, and society exploded. So it's pretty interesting. So now we're going to take a look at, and so now we're going to talk about, before I go to the next map, I want to tell you a little story. So there, ufology is filled with all of these insane stories about things that have happened to, over time. The Anunnaki, the building of the pyramids, perhaps. We have all of these amazing stories, and it can be really hard to figure out what's real and what isn't real. I mean, we can use TransDimensional mapping or remote viewing to try to figure out some of these things. They are all fundamentally unverifiable, but they're super fun to look at. And over time, you start to see patterns emerge. And this is one of these times where I started noticing patterns emerge just because the sheer amount of this stuff I've done. So you see the little Anunnaki guy with his headdress. So this was done. And then a way long time later, I did a session and I looked at, and this was blind, of course, so there is this story that President Eisenhower met with an ET or a group of ETs, and he got into this kind of a treaty. And the story goes that initially, back in the 50s, he was president, and in this part's verified, he was kind of missing for a day or two. And the story was he had an emergency dental situation, but the other story that has kind of come out, people have leaked this information now, whether it's true or not, you can kind of get to take it or leave it. It's up to you if you want to or not. I'm not saying it's all true. I'm just presenting my data. You get what you get, right? And they say that he actually went to what is now known as Edwards Air Force Base. It was under a different name back then. And he met with an ET and he got into this agreement with the ETs. Now, there's a lot of theories about what that agreement is. And then it's said that in 1952, I believe, he went to Holloman Air Force Base, which is here in New Mexico, and he met with them. They came back to meet with him again. And so this next map I'm going to show you is this Holloman Air Force alleged meeting between President Eisenhower and an ET or a group of ETs. Now, there are a lot of interesting whistleblowers who have come out and talked about this, men who lived at the base at the same time, men who worked on the base, who saw the craft fly in, who saw what happened. And so, it's one of those things. It's part of our UFO mythology. But here's what I got on my map. So let's take a look. Look at the dude. Look at the alien. What does that look like? Completely unrelated session done so far apart in time. It's really incomprehensible. You get the same dude. It's the Anunnaki come back. And I think that's what, if I had to guess, that's what I would say. It's the Anunnaki come back to talk with Eisenhower. Kind of an interesting session. And I'm going to eventually post the full mapping of this on the channel because it has 12 maps. And it's really, really fascinating. And this is just one map, but just to show you a little slice of this. But there's that still orange colored kind of a shape. And I get the mountains in the distance. Those are the mountains right outside of Holloman Air Force Base. As New Mexico has tons of mountains, but there are other ships back there too. Probably looks like the same kind of ships. And I got him talking. That's President Eisenhower, the little dude. And then there's his like guards or the army or probably the workers at the base there with their little guns and their little caps. And there's Eisenhower. I said he's wearing a blue suit, important political top dog, but not exactly in charge, right? Deep state, guys. He wants to keep the promise. He knows what's coming. Top dog, but feels impotent. Others in shadow running the show. He wants to burn it all down. And click. This was caught on film, but hidden. And there are these stories that this meeting, that this landing was filmed. And there's some alleged footage that came out in a documentary some time ago that it was supposedly the ship flying down at Holloman. But I think maybe that was, I don't know if that footage is real or not. It's just a light in the sky. It's not, the footage isn't the greatest, but I got that this was filmed. And I get that the Anunnaki guy or whatever he is, the non-human guy saying, you have only the time you were allotted and already you do not comply. So sounds like whatever treaty might have been gotten into at Edwards Air Force Base, we were not keeping up our end of the bargain. And Eisenhower was not happy that we were not keeping up our end of the bargain, but other people were apparently running the show at that point. And, you think about, if you just think about Eisenhower and some of the things he talked about, the deep state, the military industrial complex, that term literally comes from a speech he gave. He coined that term. He was not happy about any of this kind of a thing. So this kind of comes out in this session, which is super interesting. And I got the little guy with the headdress on, or a crown, or he had something on his head that, you know, it was like a ceremony. He just was very ornately dressed in a big nose, much like myself. I've got a Roman nose. What can I say? And I got that this was a deliberate journey, a return to collect something, and a promise to return again. So super interesting stuff. And I will post the entirety, the mapping of this at some point. But I wanted to share that with you tonight when we talk about this. Now we're going to get into our mapping mystery on Mount Shasta. Now, Mount Shasta, you know, another thing filled with UFO lore. There is allegedly, Mount Shasta is in Oregon, United States. It's a big mountain, beautiful, beautiful location. And many people believe that there's a civilization that lives inside the mountain, the Lemurians, right? So I mapped this out to find out. You know, this was blind. This was actually part of a big project that a number of us did together. We all got the same thing. So here's Mount Shasta. We've got a hiker, and this is from the old days, because these stories go back a long time, you know, of things happening. And so we get this hiker. He's climbing up. He sees some kind of energy or a UFO. He sees a ship, and this is he's in vintage clothes. He's hiking alone. It's a spiritual experience as it changes his life. He talks about it in the written word, a book, fiction, based on his experience, but not real. So this is somebody who wrote a book about this. And then I did some research and found that there were, you know, a number of people who hiked and had these experience, or had an experience, or wrote a book about this experience. And then I wrote that this was a little over 100 years ago, which was accurate. I did timeline here, you can see. And then I wrote, this is the start of the story, mixing truth and wishes, mixing truth and pieces of story from somewhere else. And then I wrote, why is this a story? And I wrote, not entirely true. Something happened in ancient days, then something returned much later, but it does not, in there, I can't quite read my handwriting, something like that. I don't have my my journal here on all the parts. But then I looked at this, like, you know, in the past. I looked at this and I did a new perspective on the ancient past in the upper left-hand corner, next map. New perspective on ancient past, because I was getting that something real happened in the ancient past. And there were UFOs flying in and out of this thing. And then there were many, many, many people down below. This is more indigenous people. And this became kind of a creation story for them. And then I wrote, this feels like a myth, a story here. Something sparked the story, a real event, then another. But the story grew its own legs. This is a myth. So no, there are no Lemurians inside of Mount Shasta. Something did happen in ancient times. And people have taken that story and ran with it to this day. So there's no little beings inside of Mount Shasta. So guys, I don't always get that something's real. Sometimes you get that it's not real. And this is one of those times that this was an interesting thing that happened a long time ago, but it wasn't, you know, a civilization living under there. There was some kind of UFO activity that a bunch of indigenous people saw. It became part of their creation myths. And then those stories were handed down generation to generation, became part of the local, you know, the local stories told to one another. And now it's a big myth. So there we go. Now we're going to get into something that both Jen and I looked at. We, in our student development group, Mapping Mavericks, we did a super fun project where we all got together. There were about 40 of us 40 of us could make it. Our group was bigger than that, but we had 40 people all on Zoom together, and we double blind mapped the same exact thing at the same time. We all did our own maps, but we all did it over Zoom at the same time. And then we found out what it was and we shared. This was from a pool of experiences, and Jen picked out randomly what we were going to look at. And so I'm going to share my maps first, and then we're going to move on to Jen's maps. So here we go. And what this was in 1931. There was this huge devastating flood in China. It killed something like 3 million people. It was incredibly devastating. At the time, along this huge river, they had built some dikes and levees and things like that, but the force, of nature, there were heavy rains and snow melt, and it created this huge flood that pushed all the dikes down, and there was a tremendous loss of life. So we all did this double blind, and the student results were really something. So here we are. So here's my map on this. So I get danger, big red triangle, danger, and this huge energy force coming down, hard, fast, rushing. And I drew a woman in kind of an Asian outfit, and she was carrying, I was literally bawling during this. I actually, I've thought about posting this whole thing on the channel, but I'm kind of embarrassed because I was losing it, crying so much, because there was this little girl and she was holding a basket, and in the basket she had this animal, it was her pet. I don't know if it was a cat or a dog or a guinea pig, or I don't know what it was, but it was a little furry animal, and she loved it and was trying to save this animal. And oh my gosh, I could not stop crying. She was trying to stay away. She was with the basket running. She was trying to keep the pet safe. She was sad, scared. Help me, mommy, help me. She was screaming, help me, mommy, help me. And there were people, humans, everybody. It was bad. I wrote, this is bad. Feels like an instant problem. One moment you are fine. The next moment you are not. And I did several maps on this, but I just put a couple here. Because this was the next one. This is the last map I drew. I drew circles generally in kind of across remote viewing. If you draw a circle, it means a being, a sentient being of some sort. It's kind of shorthand for a being. And so I was drawing so fast, I didn't want to draw like individual people. So I drew all these circles to mean millions of people, and I X'd them all out to mean and I wrote in huge letters, there is no one left. And my tears were just like falling like crazy. And then I wrote a natural disaster with human elements, not just loss of life, but ignorance. And that was true, that, the way that these dams were built and everything. And the other maps I did got more into the technical aspects of the flood. But the last thing I wrote, I just thought was really beautiful. All that is left are the remains after the water recedes, just memories and bones, bits of cloth, an arm holding a basket. Now I'm going to start crying again, remembering that's that little girl in the basket. She didn't make it. So anyway, now we're going to give it over to Jen, and she's going to talk about her flood map, because she did an incredible job on this as well. Take it away.
All right. So I started out, like, what I do is I do 3 scans like Birdie teaches everybody. And so I started out with my first scan, and what I got was people running, and it was an evacuation route, and it was in the mountains somewhere. They were running away from something, and I had water there. Then the next picture that I had was a bunch of people who were clamoring, like the government, saying, do something, something has to happen. This is like really bad. So that was that one. And then I had another picture here, which turns out to be a metaphor, which if you guys remember what we've talked about, it's not direct data, it's not directed, but it represents something. And so what I got there was like a boat here, and it lost something. It was like a lost treasure. And it capsized. And so I said, well, what's the treasure? And it was like loss of life. And then there was another scene. I had people running away, and they were in a big city, or they were in a town. They were all leaving because they had to go away because it was dangerous. And so what did I said, I can't barely read this. I'm looking over here. So I said, well, what was going on? It says there was a major event where people wanted answers. And I said, well, what was the event? And it was this disaster of something involving water and floods. And so then I looked at it, and it was like the timeline was kind of current, although it was in the past, but it was going to happen again. It was going to repeat. And we do know that the Yangtze River floods periodically. I mean, that's why they put the Three Gorges Dam up, so that to stop all the flooding. But they would have floods like every year, every other year, all the time. And so that's what I said. It was a repeating occurrence. And so that was kind of like what it was. And it was like loss of life. And I just said lives were lost, recurring event, life will change after the event. It was a spiritual mindset for the people to have to think about this, because there were so many people that were lost. And this did occur over several months, I believe, as it went downriver. I think it was like 2 months worth of going down the river and flooding everybody out. So that's what I got with that.
And I want to point out, just look how beautifully Jen mapped this out. See, if you see all those lines, those are called relationship lines. And this is part of the training. And if you watch our video for free here on the channel, you can map too. You'll learn how to do exactly everything you're seeing in all of these maps. And these relationship lines are super important. They allow you to understand how things are connected, and it will open up the data and give you even more data. And I'm gonna highlight a comment from Sandy, who also mapped this with us at the time, and she's here tonight. And she says, "I remember sensing survivors looking forward to anything edible afterwards. It was so moving feeling the flood." So everybody in the class really did a phenomenal job on this mapping, and Jen's was just extraordinary here. So thanks, Sandy, for the comment. You ready for the next one, Jen?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, this one is really fun. Okay, so first we're going to show you a photograph of the reveal. In other words, what Jen mapped out.
Right.
This is what she learned after she was done. And it's kind of hard to see, but you'd explain it, Jen.
Okay, it's called the Black Cat Open Casting Call for an Edgar Allan Poe movie in 1961. So all it is a bunch of women, well, people, or most of them were women, with their black cats all on a leash. And then there was a woman walking by here, and there was cars over here. And there was all these windows right here against the wall that they are, because they were lining up. And apparently, I think when I did the research, there were 162 women or people with their cats. So it was a big scene of people and cats, and the cats were on leashes. Okay, so let's just look at my my map if you want to move it forward. Okay, so the first thing I got was two people, two beings, and they were following each other, and one was pulling, and they were pulling and pushing each other. And I got that it was pretty much the cat and the owner of the cat pulling and pushing each other as they were trying to lead the cat down the path to get in line and to get for the audition. And then let's see how we want to go here. There was a bunch of information. This is one of my favorite maps because I got so much information, and then I thought that I was like so great. Not that I am great, but it was so fulfilling and satisfying to get so much information. So then I had over here, let's go over here and look at this. So over on this side, where the little buildings are and everything, was like a low-income housing with a bunch of buildings and a bunch of kids playing. And somehow they won a lottery ticket, like there in the bottom. The lottery ticket was allowing them to go to see the circus. So they are standing in line at the circus, which kind of is the definition of what this whole reveal was all about. Standing in line to go to see the circus, which all these women with their cats to attend the circus function, which, you know, an audition with 162 cats is pretty much a circus, I would think. So that was like a really good feeling when I got that. Then above, I got like two people who were like loving and caring, and they were going to go somewhere unknown. They had planned it, and they had it on their calendar. And I put that down as important because as I was doing research on this, there were posters all over about this audition with the calendar on there. So there was this, you know, so that was how I got the information about calendars, and it was an event that was going to happen. And I got all these hearts. And I have to say the hearts were really amazing too, because I found a picture of a cat with a collar that had a heart, a red heart like that. So I felt like I got a ton of information right away, not really understanding it, but got a lot of the facets of it. And then at the last minute, I got this thing, a cathedral, and it had a lot of stained glass windows. And I thought, well, how the heck does that work? I didn't understand how that would fit in. But I have to tell you something that I discovered is that I believe that my subconscious knows what I'm going to be finding in my research. And so it shows me certain things so that my research is validated and what I get. And in this case, what it was this obscure video about this guy who was doing a video about this black cat audition. And he said that one of the, what was it, Peter Lorre, passed away. He was in the movie, The Black Cat. I forget the name of the movie. Terror or something. Anyway, Peter Lorre was in the movie, and when he passed away, his body got interred at this place called the Hollywood Park Cathedral Mausoleum. And then the guy in the video, when he mentioned that, went to this mausoleum, and he showed that the inside, and there were all these stained glass windows. So I thought, well, that's kind of interesting. Who would ever have thought that? I mean, I don't know how I would ever figure that one out unless I happen to have my subconscious tell me about this, and I would happen to find that video with the guy saying that. The other thing that this guy also talked about was like, see all these windows here in the buildings over there? Well, he said across the street from where the line where all the women were with their cats was a bunch of apartment buildings, and they all had these windows, like just like that, and they were like lined up just like that. So that was another thing, and I don't know, I just thought it was just so amazing that I didn't get where it was necessarily, but I got a lot of information that kind of dovetailed into whatever it really was. So I was really happy, you know, standing in line to go to see the circus, or be in the circus for that matter. So anyway, any comments on that, Birdie?
I just love this map of yours, Jen. And you know, everyone has to realize when Jen did this map, she had only been mapping for just a few months.
No, just maybe 2 months at the most.
Yeah, 2 months at the most. And it's really remarkable, just the depth of information that you can get as a new student. And we're seeing this in all of our students today, how incredible they're doing after just a few weeks, a few months. And I mean, and other than myself, no one has been mapping for longer than a year. And we're seeing just some of the most remarkable data I've ever seen in all of remote viewing through all of these incredible students who are putting so much time and effort into working on this. Now, yeah, sure, I've been doing this for 30 years, but you got someone like Jen who's been doing it for a year, and she's really knocking some stuff out of the park. I'm very proud of her and everyone who's working on this. It's like the most fun you can have. I love this stuff. It's so much fun.
It really is fun. That's what I was going to talk about, like how great it is. So.
Yeah.
Okay, so do we want to go to the next?
You ready for the next? Here we go.
Yeah. I don't know. Do we have the original reveal on that? I don't think we do.
No, I don't have it with me at the moment.
Okay, so let me just say what this one was. I know what it was a homeless camp in LA. And it was just like, you know, how the homeless are all camped out on the sidewalks in LA, and that's what the picture was. So, and interestingly enough, I got different aspects of that scenario. And the first one was this person. It was like, it was a man who was like contemplating and about what to do, because it was a big dilemma, and it was sitting there in his second home log cabin in the mountains, kind of like situated away, which meant that to me he was very wealthy because he had a second home in the cabin in the mountains, so he had a lot of money, and he was trying to figure out what to do. Then I go over to this other side on the bottom right, where I didn't have too many pictures here, but I had a lot of words. And it was about a bunch of people who were saying, do something. We want some law passed. We don't like what's going on. You got to do something to take care of business, because something is, you know, it's not right. We got to like change things. And so basically, when I did the research, I found that there were people who were picketing and demanding all kinds of new laws to prevent the homeless people from invading their area where they lived. And then the up on the upper right, and in the middle there, I got like a big smile. So I've lived in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area. So I've gone by a lot of homeless people, and like when they, you know, hang out and they sit by the streets and the side of the road. And like I talk to them and I've given them money, and they're always pretty on the happy side, even though they're in a desperate situation. they're like always sort of in a party mood. And I kind of got that these people were having a good time, regardless of the fact that they were homeless or not. So it was kind of an interesting take, because it's kind of like how I feel sometimes about how the homeless, I mean, they're enjoying themselves together, even though they're having a tough time together. They enjoy their lives because they're happier for some reason. And that's what I see, and that's what I feel. I see that. So I got different aspects of the same reveal. And because this man that I was talking about, turns out it was, to me, the mayor of Los Angeles, who lives in an $8 million home. So she's pretty well off. And I guess she was trying to figure out what to do in this situation about the homeless, with all the constituents demanding something to be done to clear out the homeless. So that's what I got there, pretty much.
Yeah, that was really good, really great mapping, Jen, and just some really interesting, data on the mindsets there, especially of the people in that area. And that's like the thing about, all remote viewing, there's kind of this misconception that you're looking at that you're trying to describe literally a photo, for example, because a lot of, students, you start with photos, right? There's a photo, and then you do your remote viewing or your mapping, whatever system you're using. And everybody wants what they draw to look like the photo. But that is not at all what's happening here. You're not literally looking at a photo with your mind's eye and trying to describe it. You are there. You are having a full experience, all 360 degrees around you. You can taste and smell and see and feel and know literally everything in all directions. So you will often get things that are not in the photo. You're going to get the mindsets of people. You're going to get things behind you. Half the time, you're going to pick up the camera person. These pictures are taken by somebody. Why wouldn't you get that person? So it's really a mistake to look at your data. If you're watching this and you're a remote viewer, whatever persuasion remote viewer you are, it's a mistake to look at your data and to only evaluate it by what you can see in the photo. It's a huge mistake. You need to do some research, figure out the set and setting, and try to understand why your subconscious was giving you the information it was giving you. It's so much a richer experience, and it should be a rich experience. And so, I developed mapping as a means to have this full experience so that you can understand everything, what's going around, and look at the incredible data that Jen is getting here. Not just, she's not just describing a photo of a homeless encampment. She's getting everything going on, the political climate here, what's happening in these neighborhoods. It's really remarkable. So I'm really proud. Ready for the next one, Jen?
Yes.
This one's really fun.
And everybody can do this as well. I'm no more special than anybody. You just have to put your time in and do it. And it's the fun part is discovering what your subconscious is telling you by all these little things, and figuring out how well you get to know yourself, and what your subconscious is trying to tell you, and you interpreting it and understanding it and getting closer to understanding who you are at your very essence when your subconscious is telling you and showing you things. That's what I think. I mean,
it's true.
This is why it's so rewarding, and it is an experience, and it's an experience of learning about yourself.
Exactly. It's a huge, you learn more about, I always tell every single class, you learn more about yourself than you do about the rest of the universe, and you learn a hell of a lot about the rest of the universe. So that just tells you how much you're going to learn about yourself. So it's, I think, an incredible tool for self-exploration and self-understanding. And it's truly limitless. You can look at absolutely everything, different dimensions, different timelines, different realities. I'm going to touch on that toward the end of our fun adventure tonight, about a big project that I did that I'm going to be talking about at an upcoming conference. But let's move on to Grand Central Station. This one's really cool.
Yeah, so this is Grand Central Station in New York in 1929. And notice like all the lights and how dark, it's in black and white photo, and there are people wearing clothing, and it's like, because it's like winter time, and they're all standing around like in lines. So let's go to my map. So there were several maps. Let's go to the next one after this one, because this the first, yeah, the next page. So this is, I was still a beginner at this point, like maybe after the first 2 months still, when I was doing, instead of doing everything on one map, I was doing it on separate pieces of paper because I couldn't make the transition like some people can to just immediately go everything on one page. So I had separate maps, and I struggled with that for about 2 weeks for some reason. And that's part of, I guess, my getting adapted to being able to do something that I wasn't allowing myself or my subconscious. I don't know. But it definitely was when it happened, it was pretty amazing. But as it was here, I had to do separate pictures of things that I got because I just couldn't make it all one picture at the same time. So the first picture I got was like, it was a bunch of people waiting in line with tickets in their hands. And I kind of thought they were going to a concert or something. And they were students, and they were wearing winter clothes and scarves, and and it was all these bright lights because it was at night. So that's where the bright lights and the people standing in line were, and they were wearing winter clothes. Then I got another picture of like in a court. There were people in court, and like there was a court in session, and the judge and the lawyers and the defendants and all that, and the jury. And turns out that not too far from Grand Central Station is a big county courthouse. So I kind of got that feeling about what was around the area. And then the next thing I got was the last photo diagram that I got was like it was around the water where there were people, there were fishermen and boats and all kinds of things, and the U.S. Coast Guard is there. And of course, in New York City, there is all that water around there with fishermen and boats and things like that. So then we can go back to the previous page where I kind of try and tie it together. And where the fishermen had the fish, and there were these bright lights. The street lights were really bright, and they were sitting in line with a ticket in hand, and the courthouse is there. So and there was a bridge, and I kind of tied it together that way. I didn't get that it was Grand Central Station though, but I did get the details around it, like people standing in line with tickets and the bright lights, and that the fact that it was near a courthouse and near the water. So okay.
Okay, excellent. So let's see.
Okay, then this is the next one. We can go to the next one. Okay, why don't we go to the next page, because that's the first one I was doing 3 drawings of. So this picture was the miracle of the sun, which I don't know if some of you are aware of. It's the one where
I'll set the stage here. Yeah, so in 1913 in Fatima, Portugal, there were 3 little children. And they experienced these apparitions by what they believed to be the Virgin Mary. They were religious children, and they were being visited by this luminous being. And they understood this to be the Madonna, because that was their frame of reference. They didn't have another frame of reference. They're, a very religious town. And this being told them that the following month there would be a big miracle. And so tens of thousands of people came to experience what might happen. There are photos of this on the internet. You can see photos of people looking up at the sky. They're in ecstasy, because what happened was then called, and is called today, the miracle of the sun. They looked up into the sky and they called it the sun, but it was surrounded by lights, and it was spinning and moving and darting across the sky. Now, I've given this out to students. I have mapped this myself, and I always get a UFO, a big UFO. It's kind of a classic UFO story. And if you actually read the reports of the encounters and the children's description of this luminous being, it's an otherworldly figure and a big UFO in the sky. That was the miracle of the sun. And Jen, look at, you got all the people in her map, all the people, they're all looking up. There is the luminous object, the big, the sun spinning with all the colors. There's the big UFO. So Jen, take it away.
And so I had like this person that everyone was looking at with a bright light coming down. That's from that first picture up there in the left-hand corner. And then I've got, of course, the UFO, which I thought, oh, how does that fit in? I didn't understand what that was, but it was like I got the UFO element anyway. And then the other picture was like a busy traffic, intersection, And apparently, like hundreds and thousands of people all went. So that they all came from the city, and it was like the big busy city that everyone was leaving. So why don't we go back to the first picture on that right there?
Yeah.
And for some reason, when I put it all together, I got this person like talking to all these people with a megaphone, like telling them to do something, to get it together or something, speaking one's truth and seeing what the big picture is and believing everything besides, don't be a sheeple kind of thing, and the truth about ET experience, existence. So that's kind of what I got in terms of that, and it was kind of a funny way to put it all together, but that's what I got, and it was done within. I think it was done in like within 2 months, because I was doing the 3 maps like until January. So it was before January that I did this one, and it was pretty interesting when I said, "Oh my gosh," So I feel like the Fatima was the person with a megaphone saying, "Hey, believe in this. This is all kind of like stuff that you need to pay attention to." So that's what that was.
Yeah, super, super fantastic, fantastic mapping, Jen. And guys, like Jen and I keep telling you, you can map too. We've got a free class on our channel. You don't have to pay any money to learn this. Everything you're seeing in all of our maps, we teach in our free workshop. Of course, if you'd like to learn more, get some personal feedback, learn some of the more intricate parts of this, the ins and outs, we do offer classes as well. But you can go ahead and take that free class and give it a try yourself. I would love to see what you do with it. So I think we have one more map of yours to go, Jen.
Oh, I wanted to mention something about the Grand Central Station one, which I think is fairly important.
Oh,
so in the group, like the Mapping Mavericks group, we met, and somebody had said that when they were mapping this, they kept hearing the Beatles singing. And it turns out, after doing research, that the Beatles did have an exposition or a big display or exhibit there in Grand Central Station. So that was that person's connection, because they probably listened to the Beatles, and that was how they connected. And then another person did, and I have to talk about it because I think it was pretty funny. There was he had like, the Dr. Strangelove image where that Slim Pickens guy is riding that bomb as it's, he's like riding it like a Bronco. And so he had that on his map, and someone says, well, why is that? And someone says, well, maybe there was Grand Central Station in the movie. Well, I went and actually researched that because I was curious as well, because that's kind of a kind of an interesting thing. Even though the Grand Central Station has been in lots of movies, not in this particular movie, but it was in black and white, just like the photo, like, Dr. Strangelove is in black and white. The photo's in black and white. Stanley Kubrick, who was the director and writer for that movie, also lived in New York City. And I happened to run into this really obscure article that had a guy he said pictures that I like, and it mentioned Grand Central Station and Dr. Strangelove. So somehow this person tuned into something like that I don't understand how that was, because I didn't tune into it, but I wanted to see what the connection was with that. And that's what I came up with. So I thought that was interesting. But everybody has their own connection, and it's all based on your own experiences in life and your memories and whatever happens. So this is why it's so interesting, because you start finding out about yourself. You start understanding how you think and what's going on. And I think that's the most remarkable experience of all, quite honestly. Anyway, so I just wanted to say that, because to me that was pretty amazing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And it's also important to keep in mind, as we're talking about all this, you have to kind of throw away the idea that you're going to name everything and get everything very directly and perfectly, because you can only name things that you've already had an experience with. If you went to a country you've never been to, and there was an animal that you came across, and an animal you have never seen before. So let's say you visited Australia and you'd never heard of a kangaroo, didn't know what a kangaroo was, never even heard of one, and you're walking through the outback and out bounces a kangaroo. You wouldn't be able to say, wow, that's a kangaroo. You wouldn't be able to. You would compare it to other things. You would describe it. You would compare it. You would come up with ways to to explain it to someone else. And that is what we're doing in mapping or in any kind of remote viewing. You cannot name things and give really direct descriptions of things if you don't have that experience already in your mind's Rolodex. And so it's really important to value all of your data and to try to figure out what your subconscious was trying to say. We call this process deconstruction. It's a huge part of what we teach in all of this. We even teach a whole separate class just in deconstruction to learn how to evaluate the data so that you can start seeing your own patterns. And over time, your subconscious starts to give you data more directly because you start having more and more experiences, more and more things you're able to understand and articulate in a more direct manner. And so this is a process of discovery, a process of really opening up your mind to all of these possibilities. So yeah. So, okay, Jen, we're going to go to here's your last map.
Okay. So should I tell you what it is first? I guess I will. So this map is about the flying car that they released information about just March of this year in San Mateo, California. And so it's kind of important to understand what that is. So let me just talk about what it is. So what the first thing I got here was a bridge with a lot of, like on the left-hand side, a bridge with a lot of cars along the side of the road, and like a lot of traffic going across the bridge near some water. It was raining, and there were people running around with their umbrellas. You can see them underneath there with their umbrellas running around. And I have to say that after I did the reveal, that I believe I was bilocating, because I remember seeing very vividly water running down the streets and the gutters, and that was the time in San Francisco that they had those mega rains, whenever that was, sometime this spring or something. They had a lot of rain, and I really saw all this water and rain and these people running around in the water. So I'm sure I bilocated for that couple of seconds there, because I thought, wow, that's amazing how real it was. Okay, so then the next picture is down below is this pickup truck, this old beat up pickup truck. And what you don't see there, that it was spewing out a lot of dust and fumes and things like that. And in some of the pictures of that flying car, it was because it was on fans or something, all this dust was flying around. So I was like, that's sort of like what that was all about. Then I had a river emptying into a bay, which in this case, it was San Francisco Bay. It's like the Sacramento River going to San Francisco Bay with boats and everything. And then down below, I have these like a grand opening and a bunch of stores and ice cream and all these stores and everything. And so I kind of thought, like, what the heck is going on here? How does this all work together? And I have the questions that I've written down, and I know I can barely read them because this is so. Let's see if I can enlarge. I'm watching it over here. It's like life before technology was what I got, and I said, so this is life before technology. And I thought, well, how does that work? And can you show me the future? And it says it's beyond your wildest dreams. And I said, can you give me an example? And it said, yes, a flying car.
Bingo.
So I thought, okay. And it was very current. It says, anyway, so there you go. So that to me was like, oh my gosh, I really got a flying car. And somehow I got to be able to look at it like normal life, and then to ask like what the future is going to be and why is it going to be different, and because of technology, and it was because of a flying car. So I was pretty happy with that one as well.
Yeah, that was awesome. That was awesome.
Yeah. So anyway, like I said, everyone can do it. You just have to figure out what your subconscious is telling you, and that's the most interesting thing that you can do, to figure out how you think and how you remember things and how you associate things together, and how it relates to what your subconscious is telling you, because it knows everything about the world. So that's why you can look at anything and you can get information. You have to understand what your subconscious is telling you.
That's right. Exactly.
So you have to know yourself and know your subconscious. And I don't know. That's probably the best thing about this mapping. Besides getting the reveal correct or whatever, the fact that you can learn about yourself and understand yourself better is probably the most priceless thing you can get out of this whole thing, quite honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Now we're going to go to the questions. We got lots of questions. Let's see if we can get through them all. I'm going to start with a question that was just asked because some people don't know who we are, who I am. So how did I get into this and who trained me? So let me tell you my backstory, just real short. I've talked about this kind of extensively out there in some podcasts and in some of the videos I've done here. But I first learned about remote viewing the moment it was declassified. It was all over the news back in 1995. We had all these military guys on the TV, on the nightly news. And this was before the internet was huge like it is today. The internet for the public was still pretty rudimentary. You had to do dial up and wait for the connection. I'll remember those noises, all those old people like myself out there. and so, you didn't have any access to this. You couldn't find out about remote viewing on the internet. It just wasn't available. And so I tried desperately to find who could I possibly learn this from. I have to do this. I just knew that I had to learn. I was living in Atlanta, Georgia at the time, and there was a professor of sociology at Emory University, Dr. Courtney Brown, who was there, and he had just been trained by Major Ed Dames, one of the psychic spies from the military who had just retired. And Courtney was about to start a remote viewing institute that he was calling the Farsight Institute. Farsight didn't have a website then, and he was getting ready to teach their first classes there. And I bartered with him. I'm like, okay, I can build websites. I will build your website if I can take the class for free. And so we got into a deal. I was one of the first students at Farsight. And I eventually worked my way up. I had a knack for it. It was pretty good from the beginning, but, I was a beginner. And I was getting, at the beginning, I felt like I was either hitting the target or missing the target because that was how it was taught and is still taught in most forms of remote viewing. You either hit or you have a miss. And I worked my way up. I was vice president at Farsight. I was there for a couple of years. And then I left Farsight and started my own company, TransDimensional Systems. And so this was like around, early 1998, around there. And I started my own company. I trained people all over the world. And we were the first remote viewing consultancy on the planet. We were the first civilian group to take on clients. We did a lot of work for law enforcement. We worked for hedge funds. We worked for all kinds of crazy companies, a roller coaster developer. I think in our last live stream, I told some really fun stories about that. But I ended up kind of being harassed out of the field. At the time, there was just a lot of pushback against anyone who wanted to change what remote viewing looked like, what it felt like. And I was making some big changes to the original protocols. And I started to talk about remote viewing differently back then. Around the year 2000, I started to realize that all data is relevant. There is no such thing as a hit or a miss. There was one particular case where one of my second in command at the time, John Vivanco, who's a trainer in his own right this day. He's amazing person, amazing remote viewer, wonderful friend, a wonderful man, and I had given him something, a task, a target, which was a photograph of a famous dolphin at the time, Jojo the dolphin, a female dolphin, a dolphin in captivity, one of those performing dolphins like at SeaWorld. And he drew a woman wearing a raincoat, holding an umbrella in the rain. And he had like a thought bubble, and the woman was thinking, get me out of this place. And I was looking at this thinking, this is real data. This is real data. He said that the raincoat felt like velvet. That's like a dolphin's skin feels like velvet. And it was a female dolphin. And so this was his subconscious trying to tell him that this was a dolphin, in the water, in the rain, wanting to get out of captivity. And I started to look at the data differently. But a lot of people didn't like it. I started getting harassed, as did everyone else that was working with me. We started being followed, getting terrible phone calls with death threats against myself, death threats against my children. And I ended up deciding that I couldn't be in the public anymore, and I left the public field. and I shut down TDS, and I just worked in private, in secret. I have an essay at my website, norivets.com, called 20 Years of Silence. My life is transdimensional mapping. And I talk about what it was like. I ended up selling Avon door to door. I became a school teacher, started a newspaper. I did all kinds of crazy things in the 23 years I was out of the public field. But I didn't stop remote viewing. I did it every single day, twice a day. I thought about it constantly. I never stopped, but I kept working on it because I thought, I'm working on this by myself, so I'm going to figure it out. I wanted to figure it out. I wanted to know it, to understand it. I wanted it not to be just a series of disconnected data points that I would grade as a hit or a miss. I wanted to truly have a real experience and to be able to tell the story of what it was I was looking at. I wanted to, go see a royal wedding or the building of the pyramids or the creation of the universe or the nature of God or the future of humanity. I wanted to find out and really, truly experience on a deep level what all of these things truly were and were like. So I started looking at the data and I started deconstructing all of my sessions, looking every single session over, figuring out, why did I think this? Why did I write this down? Why did I draw it in this way? And over time, I started to realize that it was my subconscious just telling me everything that was there. And I wanted to be able to put that data in a framework that made more sense for me. So I came up with mapping, which it looks very different than more conventional methods of remote viewing, such as CRV or SRV or TRV, the different kinds of RVs out there, which are all come from the CRV lineage. And so I developed mapping as a means of deconstructing on the fly, a way to figure out what's actually happening while you're mapping. And then a year ago, I came, just a little over a year and a half ago now, I came back into the public field because I wanted to teach people mapping and to see if this was an anomaly, if I was the only person who could do mapping, or if this was actually a real viable method. And students in the first class blew me away. If you look at some of the first lectures I did, they're here on my YouTube, where I talk about mapping. I show some of the very first maps ever, other than my own. And the students were knocking it out of the park. And I thought, you know what? This is cool. I'm going to keep doing this. I'm not going to be afraid anymore. I'm a lot older now. My kids are all grown up. I've got 2 grandkids. Life is pretty darn great. So I decided I was going to just keep doing this, and I'm not afraid. So that's who I am and how I got into all this. So now let's get to the other questions. I'm going to scroll back to the top of the questions, and let's see. Our first question here is from Donna Nova. She is one of our explorers and has taken a number of classes with us, and she works very hard on her maps. Some of her maps have been absolutely just visually beautiful and incredible. And she asks, when we get a little more advanced in TDM, and TDM is transdimensional mapping, what is a technique we can use to tell if we are in a different timeline or a dimension? Now, this is what I would call an advanced technique. And I have developed a number of really advanced techniques. Now, all of the sessions you see me do here on the channel are all using beginner techniques. They're all techniques that you can do by watching the You Can Map To video. You'll learn literally everything that you have seen me do in all of these sessions. But I do teach advanced classes for those who want to take this and really push it to its limits. And I'm going to be teaching an advanced class in something I call time leveling. When we get enough students up practiced enough to the level where we can hold this class. We're not quite there yet because even though I've been doing this for 30 years, most of them have been doing it for a few months to a year. When we get enough students, we're going to teach time leveling, which is a number of incredible techniques where you can explore different dimensions, different realms, different universes. It's really remarkable. These techniques are pretty intense. So you have to be very practiced to be able to do these. But if you're interested in seeing some of these results of these advanced techniques and learning about different dimensions and whether or not these things even exist, I am a featured speaker in the upcoming Beyond the Brain conference. This is an online conference. It's the first weekend or second weekend in November. It's November 7th through the 9th. And you can look at beyondthebrain.org and find out. It's amazing. Rupert Sheldrake is speaking. Diana Hennessy Powell, the telepathy tapes, is speaking. I'm speaking. And what I'm speaking on is looking at different dimensions, different universes, and how to tell if these things even exist. So I hope to see some of you. This is a Zoom. This is a Zoom style conference. You will be able to ask me questions directly after my presentation if you wish to attend and see some of this work. And I will be able to post that lecture after the conference here on this channel. So if you missed the conference, but I highly recommend attending the conference because you don't want to miss Rupert and Diana and many of these other incredible people. There are a lot of fantastic talks. So it's going to be, I think, one of the highlights of my year is participating in this conference. So thanks, Donna, for the question. It's I can't teach any of those things right here, right now. No one here is ready for it, but I hope to see you there. Okay, let's see. And another question from Donna. The next question, Birdie and Gen, what is something you saw or experienced while remote viewing that changed your view on the nature of reality in a profound way? You want to take that one, Jen?
Yeah, I'll take that one. Because for me, it was a pretty amazing discovery, and how can I even explain it? I'll talk about it. So there was a task that we had, and as I was doing the task, it was blind, of course. So I got this incredible story, and I'll just tell you what the story is. It was about a rodeo, and then there was a betting window where all these people were betting and everything. And apparently there were some people who were not on the up and up, and they wanted to win so badly that they paid for some people to drug the horses. And so they had pictures of these, I had pictures of these guys drugging the horses, but someone happened to see them and understand the conversation, and they got reported to the police, and then they got arrested, and it was one of the owners who wanted to win and all this. And I thought, what a crazy story. I mean, I've never gotten something that was like that detailed and that so clear, you know, for a mapping. And I thought, well, this is really weird, but I decided to go with it. Well, it turns out the reveal was the Battle of LA. And I thought, how the heck is this going to look like the Battle of LA? The only thing that would be the same would be like it's a show, like the rodeo was a show. Well,
yeah, I'm going to just interject quickly to explain what the Battle of LA is.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, there was this happened during World War II time. So the nation was on heightened alert, especially the coasts, especially the West Coast, right? And so Los Angeles, they would have these, you know, bomb alerts and things like that, and blackouts if they were concerned that maybe the Japanese were going to fly over and start bombing us. We were, you know, in battle. And one evening, there was an enormous object that hovered over the city, enormous, huge. And all of this artillery started shooting up at this huge object, and it just ricocheted off or didn't hit the object at all, or seemed to pass through it. It was a remarkable experience, and I highly recommend looking this up. There is a UFO researcher, lives here in New Mexico. His name is David Marler, Marler. And there are you can see some videos on YouTube about him talking about the Battle of LA. He has done extensive research into this, tracking this object because it was tracked on radar and over multiple points as it moved down the coast. And so that's what the Battle of LA was. Right. Take it away, Jen.
So when I started doing research, I started reading articles about it where they never explained to the populace what the heck was going on when they were shooting things in the sky. No one knew what was going on. There was no result. No one had the answer. And then there were theories about UFOs and ETs and things like that, but no one ever knew. So, and I just started reading articles. It's just a big story. Nobody knows anything about what happened because no one's telling the truth. So I decided what it was going on with my subconscious decided to tell me a story. And I thought, well, like, what kind of crazy thing is that? Except that it just showed me that it was a story. And my subconscious had a sense of humor. And he said, okay, I'll just make up this crazy story, like, believe it or not, just like this event, like the reveal. No one knows really what happened. It's just a big story. So here, I'm going to give you a story. So And I thought that that was interesting because then I realized that my subconscious has this kind of personality. Now, I do remember a couple of times where they gave me some information that was so crazy and funny, it made me laugh, but I can't even remember what it was because it was like so off, so unexpected. But I think understanding your subconscious, what it's capable of doing, and how you can understand what it's trying to tell you is the most remarkable thing. And it has changed my life because being intuitive is one thing. Being able to map and talk to your subconscious is another. I mean, in meditation, you talk to your higher self, you talk to your subconscious, you try and get all this stuff. But this is a totally different way of approaching communicating with your subconscious and getting information. And also getting information about things that have nothing to do with you necessarily, but it presents information in a way that you can understand because you know yourself and it knows you. And you have these memories and experiences because no two people are going to get the same thing. I mean, when you get good enough to be like Birdie, that's when you really are hitting the big time because, you're really in tune with your subconscious. But getting to that place is the most amazing thing. And I think that all the students, we all go through that aha moment of like, oh my gosh, I got it. I understood it. And this is what it's telling me. And I can communicate with my subconscious. And so that's what we're all striving to do so that we can get as good as Birdie. So, and those of you who are interested in doing that, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of work, but it's also so rewarding and satisfying. It just feels so good, and especially when you get the connection and you understand, and then you can talk to your subconscious in a way that you've never been able to before. And like, who does that? Who even tries to do that? Only in mapping can you get that opportunity to have them show you the symbols and the information that you can relate to, that only you can relate to about the experience that you're looking at. So that to me is pretty profound.
Awesome. Okay, next question from Tristan. Can you remote view individuals experiencing elevated conscious states? Yes, 1000%. One of my favorite sessions that I've ever done was the enlightenment of the Buddha. And so this was, one of our earthly masters who had this incredible moment of complete oneness with the universe around him. And then he went on to try to, share this with his followers and the world at large. And that session was profound for me because I literally experienced that oneness in my mapping. I was able to have the same experience that the Buddha did and have that enlightenment moment. Now, I'm a regular person in 2025 now, right? Not sure when I looked at this, but, we have so many distractions around us and it's hard to keep holding that. But sometimes if I meditate or I lay down quietly in bed or sit quietly or go for a walk, it all comes back. And it's like you carry these pieces with you as it goes, but you can absolutely remote view anything like that. Absolutely. So let's see, I'm looking for the next questions. Okay, from Betty Tisana. Hi, girls. I would like to know if you ever mapped Planet X. Now, that is in my pool of experiences that I have not gotten to yet. It hasn't been one of the random things I've looked at. So I have not looked at Planet X yet. But when I do, I'll put it up on the channel. And I don't think you've looked at that, Jen.
No.
But it's a great one. It's a great one. It's on the list of things to get to eventually. That means so many things to look at, so little time.
So just so you know, everyone, the things that I mapped were all the experiences that we're doing to practice. And this is how we practice. So we just get all these different things to look at and blind, and then map it and then see how it works and what our subconscious is telling us. And I think the more practice we get, the better we are.
And practice is important. Looking at verifiable things is extremely important, especially for new students. And even now in my practice, I'd say 75 to 80% of everything I look at is just verifiable homework, just to keep me sharp, keep my skills sharp, keep understanding this language I'm developing with my subconscious. And the other 20% is the wicked fun stuff, like the stuff we talked about tonight mostly. So here's another great question from Oak Tyron Rainy Nian. I'm sorry if I botched your name. Have you ever stopped a mapping because it was too disturbing or offended you? Yes, yes. I can't say that anything has offended me because everything is within the realm of experience out there, but I have stopped things because it was very disturbing. I do law enforcement work. I'm currently working on a serial killer case that's very disturbing. And sometimes you just have to step up and walk away. And sometimes you come back to it, or maybe you decide you don't want to come back to it. But, and I've told this story a bunch of times, but it's worth repeating. So I was teaching a student, and this was back at TDS days, so probably 25 years ago. I was teaching a student my old method, my old TDRV method, and he was having a hard time. He was just very left brained and very a person who likes to be in control, and wasn't able to just give in to the process. And his task was, I gave him it's a World War II event, the firebombing at Dresden, which was a horrific event. The way that we treat each other here on this planet is just something else. But it was a terrible event where this firebombing occurred, and it was deliberate, and it created these tornadoes of fire all around the city of Dresden. It destroyed pretty much the entire city. And so he was remote viewing it. And all of a sudden he stands up, starts running around the room, and he literally ran out the door screaming that he was on fire. So he did not go back to that session. That is what is called a bilocation experience, when you have such a visceral experience that you really are there. You feel it in every possible way. And you always have bilocation experiences doing this. The more you do, the more bilocation experiences you have. It happens to me all the time when I'm mapping, where I'm just there. I can see it. I can feel it. I know it on such a deep integral level. So yeah, sometimes you do just have to stop and walk away. And I always tell that to students. Now, I don't give out negative stuff like that these days. I tend to give out, maybe once in a while we'll get like the big flood kind of a thing where a lot of people die, and that affected me on a deep level, and I was crying during this session. But I don't give out really horrific things these days for new students. Now, if you want to be an operational, meaning a real life working mapper, real life working explorer, remote viewer, then you have to get a little bit of a thick skin and be able to look at these things. A lot of the things we look at, like the serial case that I'm currently working on, you just have to be able to kind of understand that this is something that is real. It happened, but you have to be able to know that you're going to make a difference with your work. And I think the more you do, the more you you become to a different understanding about all of these experiences, and you're able to power through. But every once in a while I'll have something and I'll just stop. Even on some of the ones that I posted here on the channel. I've had moments where I've said, I don't like this, or, ooh, and I'll make noises or whatever because I'm not that happy, or I'll take a break. I'll even say, okay, taking a break now. And breaks are completely acceptable. Like everything else you do in life, breaks are great. So let's see. Here we go. From Arash Baseri, were white Nordics in charge of the Greys? I've never, ever gotten that. I've looked at the Greys so many times over the years. It's insane. I never got that the white Nordics were in charge of the Greys. Now, I have gotten the Nordic style aliens, other beings, non-humans. They definitely have visited the planet. They have presence here. I believe they have a couple of bases here. They have a presence here. I actually done quite a bit of work on them, but I don't think that they're in charge of the Greys. Now they have an awareness of each other. I think many of these ET groups that have visited us have an awareness of each other. Most of them tend to leave each other alone, or, just allow them to do what they're doing. They may get into little skirmishes with each other now and then, but I think that that's fairly rare. I don't think that there's a lot of territorial behavior. I think everyone kind of keeps to themselves. Let's see. Okay, here's a great question from Toot McScoot. Toot McScoot, love the name, really cute. Do you find it easier to do mappings blind or double blind compared to knowing the target? I was thinking knowing the target might let your own thoughts on the subject maybe get in the way. It's a really great observation for new students. Absolutely. If you know what it is, you can't help it. And you know, and it's really kind of surprising in the ways it can trip you up. Yeah, sure. It's going to, you're going to have an idea. You're going to come to it. If you know what it is ahead of time, you're going to have an idea that you're going to come to it with, and you're going to want to explore your own idea. And you'll still get real data. Your subconscious is still going to give you real data, but it's going to be a little more difficult to deconstruct. And the biggest problem, I think, with doing things, that's called doing it front loaded, when you know what it is, front loaded maps. Front loaded, the biggest problem, especially for new students, is that you're going to miss stuff, because you're going to miss the cool, weird, unusual stuff, because you're going to, on some level, you're going to think, well, that can't be there because I already know this about it. So that can't be right. Even though that thing you think can't be right is like the coolest part of the whole experience. So I don't recommend front loading for new students. Now, do I do front loaded sessions? Everything on this channel that I've presented has been blind, but I do front loaded sessions from time to time, typically law enforcement sessions. And I know what the data feels like. I know how to work a map, regardless of whether I know what it is or what it isn't. But I generally like to do things blind because I love the mystery and the trying to figure it out. But sometimes, sometimes I do things front loaded if it is law enforcement, like missing persons or perpetrators, things like that. I will do front loaded because you get asked to do a project or hired to do a project. And if I'm the only person working on the project at that time, well, I'm going to know what it is. But everything on this channel has been blind. And, okay, so this is actually pretty interesting. D. Shepard pointed out that our technical difficulties earlier could have to do with the current solar storm. That's actually a really good thing, and it actually has some application here to what we're talking about today, because we are in the middle of solar maximum right now. The sun's been going nuts. We've got a big CME hitting us, many solar flares, all kinds of interesting things happening with our sun and how it's affecting our planet and our radio transmissions. We've had moments over the past week where different services have gone down that have been related to solar storms. So that could very well be. But one thing that's really interesting is that when we're mapping, solar storms can really affect it, can really affect the mapping process. This is one thing that I have noticed over the years, and especially this year, since we're now in solar maximum with many, many solar flares going on. I find that it actually enhances the experience. I find I do better when we're in the middle of a solar storm. Why that is, I know not, but our bodies are comprised of all kinds of electrical currents and everything, right? We are electric beings. This is an electric universe, I believe. And so I'm really glad you brought that up. And let's see, let me go through some more questions here. I know we had a few more good ones. So there was quite a few questions here on my Grey Dude things. I highly recommend you watch my 6-hour workshop through Ubiquity University. Hey, it's really great. I tell so many stories about the Grey Dudes. It's insane. I get really deep in the woods and talk about them on such a deep level, and we get to what the abductions are all about. So I really, really recommend that if you're interested in learning more about the Grey Dudes. I'm actually writing a book on the whole history of the Grey Dudes, and it will include every single map I've ever done on them as a part of the book. So I'm hoping to have that out sometime next year. And of course, we'll talk about it on here when we get close to that.
And the UU class is called Through Their Eyes, right? That's the one, Through Their Eyes.
Yeah, through their eyes. That's the name of the UU class. If you go to Ubiquity University, um, there's a thing, check on Birdie's classes, Birdie Jaworski's classes, and there'll be a list of the classes, the workshops I've done. I've also given a workshop there on how to teach your child remote viewing. And that's a really, really great one. If you've got little kids at home, or you've got grandkids, or you work with kids, it's incredible. I came up with a very, very, very simple mapping process for kids, little kids. It works wonderfully. I've got a 11-year-old granddaughter, and it's a remarkable little process that helps them get in touch with their own intuition in a very safe, easy, kind of art-centered way. So you might want to check that out. And let's see. So, have we remote viewed 2026 or other future events? Yes. And I have did I talk about this on the last live stream, Jen? The big event and all that?
I don't recall.
I can't remember if I did or not, but yes. Yeah, I have. Now, I don't know that anything's going to happen in 2026, but I do believe that that disclosure is coming soon. I don't think that disclosure is going to come from the government. I think that's going to come from out of left field, that we're going to be surprised by something. Someone's going to come forward with some information that's undeniable. I think people are getting tired of the government dragging its feet. U.S. government, I should say. Other governments maybe aren't so crazy. And I do believe that we are heading towards big disclosure, but I believe that this disclosure is going to be, it's kind of in concert with what the non-humans out there, I think that they're kind of involved in this. And I do think we're going to have some big event. This is something that I've been looking at for literally 25 years. In fact, 25 years ago, we were remote viewing just disclosure. We thought it was around the corner back then, 25 years ago. And we got that it was going to happen 25 to 30 years in the future. That was 25 years ago. I kid you not. And at the time, we got that one of the things that was going to be a part of this was a big event involving some more, almost like a Phoenix Lights kind of a thing where people will see ships overhead. Now, I don't know what kind of dates we're looking at here. I don't like to put like specific dates on things. I think that time is, and things like this are very fluid. You can look and predict the future. I have predicted things. I am on record, as having predicted some things. And you can predict some things to some degree of accuracy, but there's it's really, I think it's probabilistic to some degree, and it depends on kind of the weight of the past, like how much energy and effort has gone into creating a moment, whether or not that moment's going to happen in the way that you think it's going to happen, or whether there's more eddies of probability around it, and maybe the result will look a little bit different, if that makes any sense. Yeah. Okay, here's a great question. When you map something, are you looking at the reality as it actually exists or as it appears to us? Do you want to answer this one, Jen?
Let me see. You're looking for the reality. Well, all you can do is really have your subconscious talk to you about how it relates to you. So if it seems like reality, to your subconscious and to you, then yes. Otherwise, it's just like how you feel and how you receive it. I think that's I guess that's the idea of can you believe what you're getting, right? I mean, right. Do you want to trust what you get? But it's like you kind of have a really strong feeling that when you get information like that, it's like sometimes you just know it's right. Sometimes you just know there's no other question around it. So that would be the reality for you.
Yeah. And so sometimes, okay, here's like kind of an example of this. So I'm not going to name names here because I don't want anyone to sue me. but there are a lot of people out there that have had a lot of unusual or reported or written about or talked about unusual experiences, right? And there's somebody who has had some well-known accounts that they've talked about, personal accounts, in this whole area, we'll say in the UFO field. And I looked at their experiences, mapped them out, and I described the experiences as they talked about them. But I also got, and I wrote this over and over on my maps, that didn't actually happen. So it was all in their head in some way, shape, or form. And that doesn't mean that they didn't have some kind of spiritual experience or, experience, it can get complicated, but you can tell when something's real and when something is just a story. Like if I gave out Santa Claus to you guys to map out, you would describe a big fat jolly man in a red hat living in a cold place and the idea of gifts and gifting, but you would also write things like this on your map. It's a fairy tale, it's a myth, it's not real. So you can still describe what you've been tasked with, but if it's not grounded in reality, you'll also get that as part of your map. You'll also get the idea that it's not real. So, and those are fun to give out sometimes, give out Santa Claus or the Tooth Fairy or Tinkerbell, things that are things we all know what they are and can describe very well, but then you get the idea, well, it's not quite real. So let's see.
Well, we are getting to the 9 o'clock.
Oh yeah. Okay, we are. Okay, we have reached our limit, guys. Thank you so much. I think we got through almost all the questions anyway, and we will definitely do this again sometime soon. But guys, I want you all to pay attention to the channel, because the next session that I am going to post, my next big mapping session, you can watch me map it out, that I'm going to post, and we're going to do it. We're going to post it so that as a premiere, so we can all watch it together and have fun in the comments on the live chat. Is, get this, guys, this one's so freaking good. It's the biggest secret in the world. If you want to know what the biggest secret in the world is, then you got to come and check it out. We're probably going to do this one Sunday afternoon so that our folks in Europe can join us. So we'll probably do it around 2 o'clock Mountain Time, 4 p.m. Eastern on Sunday. And we should have the link up for that tomorrow so that you can set your notifications on that. The biggest secret in the world. You want to know what it is? No secrets to us, gang. We can find out everything. So thank you so much for visiting us tonight and hanging out in the chat and talking with us and asking such great questions and watching our maps and listening to us babble on about all of this. We love you all very, very much. And I apologize for the technological difficulties. I still don't know exactly what happened there, but I'm glad that it stopped. So love you all. See you Sunday, where we're going to discover the biggest secret in the world. And what's really cool is that I gave this out to Jen's class as their final experience in the class. And so Jen has mapped this too, and she got the same thing I did. It's pretty cool, pretty cool. So stay tuned till Sunday. Love you all. See you then. Bye-bye.